help me build a fun trivia quiz with Gemini for my Android app. And so about me, I am a Google developer expert in Android. I'm a software engineer. I work at a company called Bol, which is an online tech retail company based in the Netherlands. We also operate in the Netherlands and in Belgium. On Twitter, you can find me at Ahmed_Tekiwer. And then on LinkedIn, that is my LinkedIn profile URL. Then, in terms of the agenda, we're going to be talking about an overview of the Android app that is going to be part of this talk. I will be talking about being introduced to Gemini, how that actually happened for me, then using Vertex AI to get ideas, then Google AI, Firebase Vertex AI SDK. Then I'm going to run through the code, and then finally the fun part is actually I'm going to give the demo. So the overview of the app. This is the app itself, Up Next TV Series Manager. And this app, should I use the mic?
Yes.
Okay, sure.
Won't be heard anyway.
Okay. Should I start again?
It's okay.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, so apologies for those who couldn't hear me before. Yeah, so this is the app that we're going to be talking about within this talk here. So it's called Up Next TV Series Manager. I created this app in 2015 as a passion project, and back then it was closed source. I have since made it an open source app, and I just contribute to it as much as possible. It is open to others in the world. If you want to help contribute to it, please do reach out. You can find it on GitHub. I will also share the link at the end. And basically, this app is also available for download on the Google Play Store. It has been there since 2015. And what this app is, actually, it's a TV show app. And the idea behind it, you've got various screens. So you've got a dashboard screen that will show you a schedule of shows that aired yesterday, today, and the next day. And then you've got an explore screen, which will show you shows that are popular, that are trending, and most anticipated. Then you have a screen that will actually showcase favorite shows. So if you have got shows that you actually want to add as a favorite, you have got this dedicated screen where you can add this to there. And then you can obviously search for shows. Each of these shows has got a show details screen, and then you can basically view more information about the shows, the seasons, the episodes, and so forth. Now, when I was looking into AI, generative AI last year, I came across this Gemini, which was introduced by Google, and I became curious. And so I then actually tried to do some research to find out what exactly is Gemini. But to be able to understand what Gemini actually is, you actually do need to first understand what generative AI is in the first place. So I asked Gemini actually for an answer to say, hey, what is generative AI? And it said, and I asked it to give it to me in the most layman version as possible. And so it said, imagine a computer program that doesn't just follow instructions, but actually creates something new. That's what generative AI is all about. These models are like creative partners. You give them some input, like a few words or an image, and they use their knowledge to generate something entirely original, like a story, a piece of music, or even a painting. So this was the answer from Gemini about generative AI. Then I asked, so I did some more research as well to try and find out what exactly is Gemini. And this is the official definition of Gemini. So it's Google's largest AI model that is not just capable of processing text input, but also code, audio, image, and video, thereby emphasizing its capabilities for multimodality. And so I was curious even more, and in my case, I was like, okay, I want to try and use this generative AI in some way. I want to try and integrate it into my Android app, but I've got absolutely no idea where to start. So I decided to ask Gemini for ideas. And so I did this through Vertex AI, which is basically a platform that you can then log into and actually interact with Gemini directly. So my prompt to Gemini was as follows. I have an Android app that I built. It has a screen that displays a schedule of TV shows that aired the previous day, the next day, and the current day. There's another screen that displays the most popular shows, the most anticipated shows, and the current trending shows. I want to integrate generative AI models into the Android app, but need ideas. And so Gemini was actually kind enough to provide some ideas that I could actually integrate. So the first one is a character and story creation. So this basically means that users can create their own TV shows with the help of Gen AI for the storylines and characters. Potential for choose your own ending adventures with the help of Gen AI. I thought this is nice, but I'd like something more. Then this is the other idea, personalized recommendations. So it said personalized TV show recommendations based on users' preferences, watch history, and interactions with the app. Gen AI suggestions based on data analysis, users' unique interests. And I thought, okay, this would be nice to add, but not right now. Similar shows, enhanced descriptions. This is basically using Gen AI to generate a list of similar TV shows to the one the user is currently viewing. Use Gen AI to provide information on the show's overall quality, critical reception, audience reactions. And I thought, no, this is not it. I want something more interactive. And so it suggested this one, interactive quizzes and trivia. Use Gen AI to generate questions and answers, challenge users' knowledge, entertain, fun, engaging, and promotes discovery and new content exploration. And I felt this is exactly what I wanted. I wanted a feature, I wanted to introduce Gen AI, but I also wanted it to be fun for my users when I actually do implement whatever feature it may be. And this was the idea that I was actually sold on, and I decided to actually start implementing. So the first thing for me was to try and explore how I could possibly use Gemini within my app, and there are various ways that you can actually do it within Android. The two main ones are using Google AI, or you can actually use Firebase. So in this case, if you use Google AI, you will basically access the API via Google AI Studio, and that's the URL. Or if you use Firebase, and they've just released an SDK, which is currently in public preview, where you can integrate an SDK into your app, and it's basically called Gemini API using Vertex AI for Firebase. And so using Google AI, you basically go to the website. This is the website built with Gemini API. You've got various options, the different languages that you can use to be able to integrate. It'll show you, like with the code example. In my case, I just wanted to know about Android. And then you can also interact with Gemini through the Google AI Studio, which is basically a console type interface. And then you can provide a prompt, test it out, so speak to Gemini directly and get a response. This will basically give you an idea of how it will, the input will go and the output will come when you integrate it within your app. Then to be able to integrate it within your Android app or any app whatsoever, you're going to need an API key, and this is where you'll need to get it. On the top left, you'll see it says Get API Key, and you'll generate one. Then the other option is using Firebase Vertex AI SDK, and here you will actually see it on the website, on Firebase's website, so firebase.google.com. You can see there, so getting started with the Gemini API using the Vertex AI for Firebase SDKs. There are different SDKs available. In my case, it was Android, and as I mentioned, this SDK is currently in public preview, but it is something that you could actually look into trying and testing out and so forth. So there are some requirements or prerequisites before you can actually integrate this into your app. So if you already have a Firebase project, you're going to need to upgrade it to the Blaze pay-as-you-go plan. Then you're not going to need to enable two APIs on the Google console, the Cloud Console. Then you'll be able to integrate it. Otherwise, you will then have to follow the extra steps of setting up your project, connecting your app to Firebase, and so forth. Then this is how I integrated it within my code. So there are two options, like I said. So if you're going to take the Google AI route, this is how you would add the SDK to your app. So you basically add the dependency com.google.ai.client to generative AI.generative.ai. So you can add it that way. In my case, I also added Lottie because of the animations. I liked to make things pretty, at least because this was the whole point, to make it interactive and fun for my users. Then if you're going to be using the Firebase Vertex AI SDK, this is how you would include it. So com.google Firebase, Firebase-Vertex AI. So you include that SDK. As I mentioned, it will require the Blaze pay-as-you-go plan so that you can use it, and you'll be required to enable APIs. within your project. Then within my code, so this is how I would set it up within my view model. So I didn't have to set up any repository layer per se for this interaction. The interaction or the connection is actually within my view model. So within my view model, I basically call the generative AI model, so generative model, and then you just give it the model name. So the model name will be like using Pro or Flash and so forth. And then you have to provide an API key, but you also need to make sure that this API key is safe. So in this case, like using build config, and then you can even add an extra layer like using the secrets API to be able to try and hide it when you're actually trying to get this access this API key within your code. Then the other safer way, which is to use the SDK itself. So this here, as you can see, the difference is that you actually don't need to provide an API key because the Firebase Vertex AI SDK will take care of that for you. So you don't need to actually provide the API key. All you just need to provide is the model that you're going to use in order to interact. In this case, I'm using the Flash 1.5 model. And then it's also recommended to use the Firebase app check. So this is something you'll need to enable on your Firebase project. This is basically an extra layer as well of integrity to protect your app from misuse from other users. Then within my view model, I defined a init function called get trivia from Gemini. And this function basically just speaks to that generative model to basically get my data. So at the bottom there where it says a val response equals generative model.generate content. You could also choose get content stream. So this will basically mean kind of like a chat where a stream of content is coming in as a flow. In my case, I didn't want that. I wanted all the information all at once. And then my prompt, I will actually showcase it. My prompt was basically generate a trivia quiz for 5 recent and popular TV shows. The response needs to be a JSON object that contains the questions and answers for each show in multiple choice, as well as a publicly accessible URL of the show's poster image. The JSON object should be valid and can be correctly parsed. Ensure all brackets of the JSON output are closed correctly, and ensure the JSON matches the following JSON structure. I put this all in to try and somehow make sure that I'm actually going to get a valid JSON object back. And then, so this is the prompt that I've defined there. And this is what is then gets sent to Gemini through the SDK or through the API call. And then my questions, so the questions that come back, or rather the response that comes back from Gemini, in my case right now, it's not a proper JSON response or JSON formatted response. There is some cleanup that I had to do, so I wrote a custom function to basically clean it up. So that it can be a JSON object that I can then use. And then I then use those questions to then create my data classes and so forth. So I then determine the current questions. I also determine the next question based on whatever iteration that it's currently on. I pass this as a state to my UI. So passing the questions, the current question, the next question, and the correct answers. And then I then also pass, if there's an error, I also then pass a state there, say maybe there were no questions that were found. Then this is the UI part. So this is within Compose. So my app uses Compose entirely. So this is the trivia screen. And so this is the all-encompassing screen that will basically display the UI. So it handles the state, so the state that it gets from the view model, and then the scroll state, and then it passes us down to the different content areas. So in this case, I've got a trivia loading screen, and this trivia loading screen is basically to display some sort of loading indicator when the questions are being retrieved, or when Gemini is actually busy determining or processing my prompt. And then while it's busy doing all of that, I'm displaying this fun robot that's bouncing up and down. You will see it in the demo part. And then, so this is how I've defined the composable. And then the complete screen, I basically display a celebration of sorts using, and this is also a Lottie animation. And if you've got 4 correct answers, the answer will be there. If you've got nothing, there'll be a different animation that will be displayed to kind of encourage you to keep trying. So this is the animation that will be shown. And then I've got the question itself. So this is the format of the question, where you'd have the name of the show at the top, the question itself, the trivia question, and then the possible answers in multiple choice, and then a button to go next. This is all from Gemini. The questions that you see there, the show title, and the options, these are all provided by Gemini, and I've passed these into my app. Then this is actually the result. So the demo, the fun part. So as Gemini is processing my input, then the questions are loaded there. You can then click on an answer. If it's green, you've got it correctly. Then if it's red, then you actually got it incorrect. So this was the aim of it, was just to try and make it fun as possible. Obviously, as time goes by, I'm going to improve on this, maybe even improve on the UI and so forth. But this was the first iteration where I first asked Gemini for an idea. I had no idea what feature I could add that is fun for my users. Gemini actually gave me a list of options. I chose this quiz as that. And then I actually used Gemini even further to give me the questions and the answers. And I was able to build this really fun trivia quiz. So for references, so if you want an introduction to Gemini, what it's all about, you can view on DeepMind or Google. That's the URL there. The app that I mentioned that this talk was based on, UpNext CV Series Manager, you can find it on the Dev Library. So it's an official app that's part of the Google Dev Library. And if you want to contribute, you're totally open to. And then if you want to know more about Google AI, interacting with Google AI Studio, you can start off there, ai.google.dev. And then Gemini API, using Vertex AI for Firebase, so the SDK that I use within this app, you can view it there. I mentioned app check, which is something you need to, that is recommended to be added if you're going to use Firebase. So this is the URL you can do to view the documentation and how to add it and so forth. And yes, so that is me. And as I mentioned, I'm Ahmed Tekiwa. You can find me on Twitter or X at Ahmed_Tekiwa. And then that's my LinkedIn URL. Thank you so much.